Hey everyone, this is Rohan Shah with BestEconTutor.com, and in this video, we'll be talking about profit maximization, shutdown decisions, and the long run. Before talking about profit maximization, let's talk about what perfect competition even means. Now, we make some assumptions here about the real world, and they're not true, but here's what they are. We're assuming that there are no barriers to entry in a perfectly competitive market. What that means is anyone can just set up shop and sell their thing. Now, another assumption is perfect information. So when somebody else sets up shop, everyone automatically knows about it. So no marketing needed. Another assumption is that there are identical products, meaning you really can't distinguish whether, this producer sold it or that producer sold it. So for example, let's take the banana industry. Let's say you're selling bananas, and if you're in a perfectly competitive market, what that means is that there's no barriers to entry. Anyone else can open up a banana selling store. What that also means is that the products are identical, so a customer wouldn't be able to tell whether they bought that banana from you or from some other producer. Now, here's a consequence of these assumptions. Any firm in perfect competition is what we call a price taker. What that means is that whatever price every other banana vendor is selling their bananas for, that's exactly the price that you have to sell yours for. So if everyone else is selling bananas for $1 each, well then, you have to sell bananas for $1. If you sold bananas at $1.01, $1.01, you will sell exactly 0 bananas. No customer will want to buy it from you because of all those assumptions. So really what your demand curve ends up looking like for you as a firm individually, not the market as a whole, just you as an individual business, your demand is totally horizontal because you can sell whatever quantity you want, but the price you sell your bananas for has to be at $1. So your demand's technically perfectly elastic, just to bring up an old topic, but that's what that means. A mathematical way to say price taker is that P, your price, equals MR. So MR is marginal revenue. It's the revenue you get from selling 1 extra banana. So if you are in a perfectly competitive market, then your price always equals your MR. What that means is that if you were to sell 1 more banana at exactly $1, your revenues, your marginal revenue, the revenue that you get for that 1 extra banana, is always $1. So as we'll see later on, for other types of firms that are like a monopoly or something like that, their P does not equal MR. But for now, one thing that makes a firm perfect competition is that the price always equals MR. So now for the question, how do you maximize profits if you're in a perfectly competitive market? Let's first talk about what profits actually are. Now, the notation for profits, usually in economics, is pi. No relation at all to 3.14. The reason we use pi instead of p is because we're already using p for price. So now there's no confusion. If you see a p, that's price. If you see a pi, that's profit. So the main equation for profit is that it's total revenues minus total cost. Total revenue is how much money you're bringing in sales from your customers, and total cost is just what we've talked about, how much you spend to produce the goods. So revenues minus cost is kind of what you have left over, and that's your profit. Now, another useful equation for profits is this. It's actually the exact same equation written in a different way, and as we'll see, if we use this, it sometimes makes it easier to calculate it or to visualize it graphically. So it is important to know this equation. It's Q times P minus ATC. First of all, just mathematically, why is it the same thing? If you multiply the Q out, distribute it out, Q times P is your total revenue, because how many items you're selling times the price at which you sell each one for. If you sell 5 items for 20 bucks each, 5 times 20 is how much revenues you make, minus ATC times Q is your total cost, which we saw from the previous module. So that's the same thing. Now, practically, one way to think about it is price is how much you're charging your customer. And what does ATC even mean practically, other than TC over Q? The real-world interpretation of ATC is, when all is said and done, rent and everything included, it's how much it costs you to make, on average, every single item that you sell. So, if you're selling something at a price of $5 each, and it costs you on average $3 to make each unit, well then you're making a $2 profit per unit. So in a way, P, $5 minus the 3, that's your per unit profit. So P minus ATC is your per unit profit. Times the quantity that you sell, that gives you your overall profit. So that's a very useful interpretation of that. That's a very useful way to think about profit. That's your per unit profit, price minus ATC. Notice it's not price minus MC. Price minus MC is how much you make for the very last item in profits, because that's what marginal is, but that's overall one way to think about it. But that's just what it is. How do you maximize profit? How do you make sure that that number is as high as can be? Well, the golden rule, I'll just sort of cut to the chase and then we'll sort of see why, but the golden rule of how to maximize profit is this. You want P to equal MC. If P equals MC, then your profits are going to be as high as they can. Here's why. Let's say, going back to the banana example, the price in the market, again, you're a price taker in a perfectly competitive market, so your demand is really horizontal. So if that's the price, you have to sell it at a price of 1 that's horizontal. The question is, what quantity should you produce? Notice you can't even change the price, but what quantity, that's the decision you can make. What quantity gets you the most profits? Well, let's see. Let's say you're making this quantity. Well, the marginal cost, if you're making this quantity, again, numbers aside, so we're generalizing here. If you're making this quantity, it costs you this much to make the very last item, and you sold it for $1, so you made a profit. But here's why you're not maximizing profits over here. Because you could make one more item, one more banana, and it's still, as long as the MC, the red value, is less than 1, the black line over here, as long as the red value is less than it, you can make profits by selling an extra banana. So here, because you can make all the profits you did here, but sell one more banana for $1, and it costs you less than $1 to make it, so, you know, you're making profits. So you can keep making more and more profits all the way up until here. If you're making this quantity, and that, by the way, is the quantity where P equals MC, that's where the black line intersects with the MC, the red curve. So that quantity is where you're maximizing your profits. Because again, anywhere before that, you want to make more of a quantity to make more profits. And on the other hand, here, if you were to produce even more, then you'd actually lose money, because now it costs you more than the $1 to make it. So if it cost you $1.20 to make it and you sold it for $1, you'll lose 20 cents, right? So if you're anywhere here, you actually make more profits by going in this direction. And if you're anywhere here, you make more profits by producing more. So that's why we can say that profits are maximized where P equals MC. And we can also generalize that in general, if P is less than MC, like we saw at the very end over here, the price was less, then you want to decrease the quantity produced. And if P is greater than MC, like at the beginning, then you want to produce more, then you want to increase the quantity. So that is how you maximize profits. Now that's how to maximize profit, and to actually see what your profits are, the actual number, one way to see it graphically is if you're given your ATC curve. So let's say this is the price of $1, the red curve here, and the MC is also this red curve here. Well, how do you maximize profits? P equals MC, so you know that this is the quantity. Go horizontally down, that's the quantity that maximizes profits. But then to see what your profits actually are, we can use this equation. So at that quantity, the price is 1, and at that quantity, that's 1, what's your ATC? So you'd be given that if you know that equation. So let's say if that was 80 cents, for example, then that tells us that when we're maximizing profits, you know, we're charging $1, and on average, it's costing us, our ATC at that quantity is 80 cents. So our profits are 20 cents per unit. So our P minus ATC is this high. This is P, and that's ATC. So P minus ATC is, this horizontal gap, this 20 cents. So that times the quantity. So if that was, 200 bananas, and that 20 cents per unit profit times 200 bananas, that's this rectangle. So you'll often see, instructors or textbooks saying, oh yeah, your profits are this rectangle, and it might look confusing at first, but all they're doing is length times width. The width of this box is the quantity, and the height of this box is the difference between P and ATC, which is your per unit profit, and length times width gives you the area of a rectangle, but that also happens to be length times width is your profits. Now let's talk about how do you know when a firm should shut down or not. Couple points of definitions here. The minimum point of the ATC curve is called the break-even price. And the minimum point, meaning the minimum Y value, looking for that too, of the AVC curve is called the shutdown price. In a moment we'll see why these are called what they are, but break-even price, shutdown price. Here's the issue here. Just because we're maximizing our profits, let's say we already did P equals MC, doesn't actually tell you what your profits are. Your profits could be negative, could be a huge negative number, might be positive, we have no idea. So once you've already figured out how to maximize profits, there's another actual decision that you have to make. Should you stay open or not? And as we'll see, that's a decision that you have to make for the short run and also separately for the long run. So here's the rule of thumb that we use. If the price is anywhere above or even equal to the break-even price, so that's saying that if P is greater than or equal to the minimum of the ATC, then you want to stay open in the short run and the long run. Stay open in the short run, stay open in the long run. You're good to go. Here's one way to think about it. If the price is above that, P is going to be above the ATC. So that means that you are making a profit, because if you look at the profit equation, P minus ATC will be positive. You're making a positive per unit profit, so hey, nothing wrong with that. Even if P was equal and you're making 0, that's still not bad, as we talked about earlier in a previous module, where 0 profits, is not a bad thing. But either way, that's how you know that you're good to go. But what if your price was in between these two? So again, here, graphically, you're good for the short run and the long run. But if you're somewhere in the middle here, if price is in between the shutdown and break-even price, so really that's just like saying anytime P is less than your ATC, but at least equal to your AVC, well, here's the issue. You're making a loss, for sure. In fact, anytime the price is less than the break-even price, you're making a loss. But you sometimes might want to stay open in the short run, even if you're making a loss. Now, in the long run, however, if you're making a loss, you want to shut down, period. So if your price is less than ATC, you want to exit in the long run. But as long as your price is above, the AVC, you're good to go for the short run. You're okay staying open, even though it's a loss, you'll sort of close down eventually. So here, you'd stay open in the short run, but you would exit out in the long run. And finally, if price was in this range, even less than the minimum of AVC, if P was less than the AVC, that minimum point, then you want to shut down immediately. Then you're closed in the short run and closed in the long run. Now, the reason that is that if your price is still at least equal to the AVC, that means your revenues are covering your variable costs, because if P is at least equal to AVC, you multiply both sides by Q, that's the same thing as saying your total revenues, because P times Q is total revenue, is at least equal to VC. So these two are the same thing. So if that's true, that means your revenues are at least covering all your variable costs, and on top, you maybe even have some left to put towards the fixed cost. Because in the short run, that's the thing about the short run, you have to pay your fixed costs regardless. Even if you were to close up shop, you have to pay them. So in that case, even if it's a loss, if it's not that much of a loss, then you're okay staying open, because at least you're able to pay your variable costs and you have something to put towards fixed, which is better than paying the full fixed cost anyways if you were to shut down. Now let's talk a little about the long run. This might seem like a very counterintuitive grand conclusion that we make, but here's the thing. all firms in a perfect competition market make a zero profit in the long run. Now, here's why that's true. It's all based on the assumptions we make. So it's not really true in the real world, but if these conditions were true, if you were in a perfectly competitive market, what does that even mean? That means, there's no barriers to entry. Anyone can open up shop. There's perfect information, so no marketing needed, no brand loyalty. It's all the same products, right? So that alone, let's see what happens. Let's say, let's say it costs you 30 cents at bare minimum to make this marker. 30 cents to make a marker. And let's say you're selling it for $1. Well, you're making a profit, right? So here's why that's not going to be sustained in the long run. If anyone anywhere in any perfect competition market's making a profit, somebody else wants to enter the market. Somebody else notices that, hey, this guy's making a profit selling markers. So what they're going to do is they're going to start their own marker selling shop, and they're going to charge 99 cents instead of $1. And then all the customers, not just many, every single customer goes to that guy who's selling it for 99 cents. Nobody's going to buy it from me for $1. So then I'll lower my price to 98 cents, and he'll lower his to 97. Next thing you know, we're both selling markers at 50 cents. We're splitting the market, but it's still a profit because it only cost me 30 cents to make it. So, but even that's not sustainable, because then a third person will open up shop. Again, it's because of our assumptions. Because of our assumptions, there's no barriers to entry, so the third person can open up shop. No marketing needed because there's perfect information. Nobody will care whether they're buying it from us or that new guy because there's, identical products. So with those assumptions, every single person then goes to that third guy who's going to sell it for like 49 cents. And next thing you know, there's 100 different people selling markers, all for 31 cents each. So we're all making like a very small profit. And then the 101st guy opens up shop and starts charging 30 cents for it. And now everyone goes to that person, and basically everyone's making a $0 profit because, you have to sell the markers for 30 cents at that point, and you're making a zero profit because that's what it costs you to make. So that's really the reasoning for why in the long run, firms in perfectly competitive markets, so not our real world, in this fictional world of economics that we've created, why a firm in a perfectly competitive market makes zero profit in the long run. Now, we can actually go one step further and say that if this is your ATC and this is your MC, remember how the price kind of was given to you in the previous problems where, it's a horizontal line. It sort of depends on the industry, right? You're a price taker. So here's one thing is it's important to distinguish between the individual firm and the industry as a whole. So in the industry as a whole, let's say this is the price. Well, then you as a firm, you have to set that same price. That price is your sort of demand. So you at that point, because it's at least, this is a break-even price, right? The minimum of the ATC is a break-even price. So as long as the price is greater than that, you're going to make a profit. So you're good to go over here. You're making a profit. You're happy. But what did we say happens in the long run? When anyone ever is making a profit, other people want to join. And what that does is that in the industry, it doesn't really change you for now, but in the industry, the supply moves to the right. So your MC isn't affected, but the industry supply curve moves to the right because other people are now supplying the good. And as that happens, the price is lowered. And then you face a lower price. So now instead of this price, you're facing this new price, and so you're making less of a profit. And that keeps happening, but it's still a profit, so people keep entering until the price is so low that it's equal to the minimum ATC. And that is where you're making zero profits, because that's where you're exactly breaking even. That's where your maximum profits are to zero, because the P equals ATC. And then your profits are, Q times P minus ATC. But remember, if P equals ATC, there are no profits. It costs you 30 cents to make it. You're selling it for 30 cents. So that's what happens in the long run. People keep entering in the industry until the price is there. So the other thing we can conclude is that in the long run, the price is always the minimum of the ATC. So now let's look at a question from a student. Does maximizing profits always mean you'd want to stay open and vice versa? So let's say all you know about a company is that they're making $1 billion. Well, you'd probably say that they should stay open if they're making a profit. But are they maximizing profits? We actually have no idea, because what if they could be making $2 billion by doing something else, right? So, just because they want to stay open doesn't mean that they're maximizing profits. Now, same is true the other way around. What if all we knew is that they're making negative $1 billion? Well then, we'll probably say that you want to close down. At least for the long run, you definitely want to close down, because you could be making 0 instead of negative $1 billion. But maybe they are maximizing profits, right? Maybe anything else that company does would get them negative $2 billion, and negative 1 is in fact the best they can do. That would probably happen if you're in a dying industry, like if you own a magazine about VHSs. So yeah, you're probably gonna make a negative profit as your maximum, and so there's really no relation then between whether you want to stay open and whether you're actually maximizing profits. The key is this: to see if you're maximizing profits, compare price with MC. To see if you want to stay open or not in the short and long run, compare price with the averages, AVC and ATC. And finally, let's look at another question. Why would you ever want to stay open in the short run if you have a loss? It's a good question. In the long run, it's pretty simple. If you're making a loss, close down, profit, stay open. But in the short run, here's the issue. Let's say you started your own business. And let's say you got a 3-year lease on an office space. And let's say you're paying $1,000 a month in rent. So you have a 3-year lease. That's your fixed cost. You have to, $1,000 a month. You're running your business, let's say a year into your 3-year lease. And now you're not doing so well, so you're wondering, should I even stay open or should I close up shop? Here's the issue. Whether you close down or stay open, you have to pay the $1,000 until your lease ends, right? So here's the thing. What if your profits, with rent included, all that included, let's say your profits were, negative $100. Well, that's actually not that bad, because the alternative is if you were to say, oh, negative $100, I should close down. Well, then you're actually going to make negative $1,000, because if you're closed up, you have no revenues coming in. Sure, you don't have any variable costs, but you still have your fixed costs in the short run. So that's why in the short run, actually negative $100 profit is actually better than negative $1,000, which you'd get if you were to close up. So that's why in that case, you'd want to stay open in the short run, even though you're making negative 100, because it's better than the alternative, which is negative 1,000. On the other hand, if you were making negative 1,500, then yeah, it's better up to just close up shop and only make negative 1,000 by closing up. So really, you don't have to calculate the FC and the profits. All you have to do is compare price to AVC. If price is better than AVC, that means that you're better off by staying open, and that your profits overall are, greater than just the negative FC, which means, you're able to cover all your variable costs, but you're able to put something towards that 1,000. But if P is less than AVC, then yeah, then not only are you not able to cover the 1,000, but you also have other expenses that you're not able to cover, and then it's better off to just pay the 1,000. Well, I hope you now understand economics better, and if you really want to make sure you've mastered the concepts, check out our active learning customized platform at bestecontutor.com. It's like having a one-on-one tutor right in front of you 24/7. You can click here to try it out for free. And we'll be adding more topics and videos on YouTube, so make sure you subscribe below for the latest updates.